Perhaps yes. This is already in the realm of superpowers. It all depends on the speed of consciousness. If a person sharply increases the speed of their consciousness and perception, they create the illusion that the world seems to stop, even to the point of complete stillness. The faster the consciousness, the harder it is for the external world to create an illusion for us, an illusion that something is happening. And if the speed of consciousness indeed significantly increases, then the visual sequence that we constantly observe around us stops being so unshakable. But in order to do this by one's own desire, there must be crazy motivation. Basically, all superpowers manifest in moments of life and death. As for doing it just for the camera or for fun, I don't know. I can't do that. And I haven't come across a single person who could do that just for fun. In such cases, when an emergency situation arises, you discover so many superpowers within yourself that you have not trained for. But why is that? Because what we are doing, this expansion and relaxation, is precisely what opens the path to fiery consciousness. If both physics, psychology, and energy are more or less tuned and adapted to this, then as soon as causality appears, consciousness sharply ignites. I refer to it as the fire of consciousness. In reality, it's a word, but the fire is not quite. Essentially correct. It feels like fire, but fundamentally it is speed. It is an insane speed of perception that causes the world to simply stop, because it is originally illusory, and it no longer has the power to create this continuity. Therefore, potentially, of course, it is possible, potentially. But personally, I have the intention to escape from here, rather than play with time. Other practitioners are also engaged in their own affairs, but you can certainly set an intention to learn how to manage time. In principle, I explain the mechanism. In general, in most cases, Siths and superpowers manifest only in critical moments. They manifest especially vividly when it is a matter of life and death. There is, of course, a connection between a person's appearance and the characteristics of their consciousness. Here, it is probably more accurate to say not pain, there, rigid or spasmed, but rather its form. That is, someone has a form of consciousness, roughly speaking, of a warrior, and as a warrior, he can be infinitely powerful and manifested. Somebody has the form of consciousness of a Brahmin, and is not a warrior at all, but if immersed in an environment of study, experiments and research, they will feel like a fish in water, and through this process will unleash tremendous power. There is a form of consciousness in people who operate very effectively in the material world. One could say they are traders there, but there are no pure representatives among them. There are always different settings and different balances, and therefore, even among modern people with a more pronounced form of consciousness of Brahmins, there exists both a commercial instinct and a warrior spirit, and all of this is also present. And of course, the form of consciousness has a reflection in physics. Just by looking at a person's physical body, one can immediately conclude in which environment and in which path they will be most fiery, most manifested, and in which path their consciousness will feel most comfortable and easily manifest. But these are precisely characteristics, properties, not spasms. Spasms are things that, regardless of their initial form, simply hinder consciousness from manifesting and prevent it from moving. The spasm of a person with the consciousness of a Brahmin and the spasm of a person, for example, a warrior, can be absolutely identical and can equally interfere with the normal manifestation of the form of consciousness that prevails in a person. But if you look even deeper, it is essentially a kind of balance between human passions. Some have passions in one aspect, while others have passions in another aspect. In other words, these are certain settings that have their essence in passions. And depending on the passions that a particle of consciousness brings here, that will be its configuration, and that's all. There are known cases where warriors, after going through a vast number of battles, enter meditation, engage in practices, and are reborn, returning from these practices as Brahmins. Even the characteristics of their bodies can change, and they may look completely different. That is, in principle, it is all a dynamic process that can be transformed. But initially, of course, the starting conditions determine the way of life, and then the way of life can change the starting conditions. There is a correlation between the properties of consciousness and the characteristics of the body. Of course, there is this illusion of perception arises when the sensation of the physical body begins to gradually blur, and the energetic foundation of the organism starts to be perceived in place of the physical body. And at that moment, the geometry may become unexpectedly distorted, and some strange movements may appear. And in general, this can make everything start to move, spin, and rotate. And all of this is already a perception of energy directly. Simply out of habit, the brain, consciousness, continues to try to connect this somehow with the material world, with the physical world. But in reality, perception is already taking place in the non-material world. Perception of energy is already happening. Therefore, these are absolutely normal processes. And the more one immerses in them, the more intricate the sensations will be, until eventually the brain accepts that these are not physical processes. They are something else entirely, and they should be perceived not through the filter of physical sensations, but completely without filters, directly. Therefore, here it is only necessary to continue and not to worry about it, to keep observing, contemplating, and perceiving. To answer this question accurately, one must closely examine the world that is currently perceived, to homes, to streets, to people, to memorable events with other people. In general, try to look for inconsistencies between your memory and the real world currently being perceived. And through such a process, one can, in principle, understand whether a jump to another timeline has occurred or not. You just remember differently how things look, where they are located. You can be told stories that it was such a serious thing, yes, or you can tell a story and a person might say to you, that never happened. What are you talking about? Right. You need to pay attention to such things. And then, yes, if suddenly there is a sharp increase, it means that 100% something has happened. A change in the spiral of time has occurred. And if, well, how you live, in principle, everything is clear, everything fits into memory, everything corresponds to your ideas, well, most likely not. Most likely, it is still the same timeline that existed before, just the relationships and value system have changed. Well, of course, it's normal. Don't try to find anything supernatural in this process. It's the same as going to the gym. If you went to the gym, lifted weights, kettlebells, and ropes, the sledgehammer waved, well, that's it, you are tired. You have no more strength for today. But your physical strength has increased as well. The same goes for practice. If you sit down, invest yourself properly, you spend your consciousness. We do not spend attention, we spend our consciousness. That is, we manage our consciousness through attention. And once we have exhausted our consciousness, naturally, you are worn out and you need to rest. But if you, for example, got up in the morning, breathed through the gates and breathed for relaxation, the practices for relieving spasms are very exhausting. But practices of inhaling pure consciousness into every cell of the body are quite invigorating. If you spend a lot of resources to reach the gates, yes, there will be fatigue. If for you the gates are a given, on the contrary, passing through them feels like taking a breath and simply being born anew. These are all skills. They are acquired through experience. The more a person engages in practical energy work, the more experienced they become in these matters. And yes, that's absolutely right. If one invests properly in releasing constraining structures, then it's not just that. All day there, that's it. It's time to sleep already. Until the next morning, well, this is the right process. They needed to be enhanced, revealed, and released, or at least just to be contemplated and not thought about. Because when we start to think, our attention flows into the brain, and there is no heart in the brain. Therefore, when processes begin in the heart, one should try to maintain inner silence for as long as possible, and contemplate what is happening in the middle of the heart. Then this process will become like a certain warmth, heat, fire, and this is exactly what is needed. What we are actually looking for in it. Why are we developing extrasensory abilities here? To at least feel where the energy is working, where the physical body hurts. I touch the table with my hand, receiving some information from my senses, and now I have removed my hand from the table and can simply feel the etheric field around my hand. How to distinguish them? For me, this is a question similar to how to distinguish black from white. They somehow look different in relation to each other. Or how to distinguish blue from green? Sometimes they look different relative to each other. I don't know. practice. Engage in these processes. If you are scared, go to the doctors. If you are not scared, practice a bit more. Multiple repetitions reveal knowledge. Therefore, I can only advise to simply repeat the practice and not take it to extremes. And through repeated practice, gain your personal experience, your personal mastery in these processes. It is supposed to hurt. And the bouncing structures begin to melt. The pain can be very intense, both physically and psychologically. Do you think about why no one wants to look into their heart in everyday life? Because it is easier to spread oneself across the external world than to perceive what has already been done, what has already happened. And this is what has already happened and has been done. But that intense spasm that everyone carries within themselves, no one wants to release it, yet it needs to be done. If there is any claim to spiritual development, if there is any claim to energy work, this must be done. Otherwise, it is just the life of an ordinary person, a common one. So it is absolutely normal. If it seems too painful, for example, you can focus and concentrate less and try to be more relaxed in this state, more in a trusting position. That is, there is a difference between looking at something with focus and looking at something contemplatively. So try to look more contemplatively, without interfering at all. This is how a gaze looks, as if you are looking somewhere beyond the horizon, lost in thought. This way, you can also observe your heart without rigid fixation. It will be a slower process, but it will be less painful. If a person has opened their heart to a certain degree of intensity in their life, just because you feel a little itch there, it doesn't mean you have truly opened your heart. There is a degree of intensity, and when a person reaches a certain degree of intensity, they gain the ability to choose the moment of departure. But regardless of whether a person has opened their heart or not, whether they have fulfilled their dharma or not, whether they have debts to this world or not, regardless of all this, every particle of consciousness enters the space of Bordeaux. In Russian, this is purgatory. And in this space there is nothing but you as pure perception. And it is in this space that what will happen next is determined. My experience of entering this space tells me that the only thing that matters there is intention. That very intention that you have polished and sharpened your whole life. Because if you were confronted by two thugs in an alley and you renounced your intention in 3 seconds, that is not intention. That is self-deception. This is a lie. And if even in the face of death you did not retreat from your intention, then it defines you. And so, in order for your intention to define, a conscious person, a practicing person, refines it from the very day they first learned about it. For several decades now, I have been refining my intentions, and I will continue to do so until the very last moment of my breath. But even now, my experience allows me to say that in the space of Bordeaux, where you are pure consciousness, pure perception, and there is nothing there. There is no heart, there is no energy, there is no physical body, no flow, there is nothing at all. It is simply like pure perception there, absolutely bare. It is precisely in this state that the intention I already have allows me to be in an absolutely calm, harmonious state and to direct my perception, the vector of my perception, towards the point of realization. But I have not yet reached realization, so I am still treading this earth along with everyone else. If something starts to hurt during practice, it means you need to check the physical body in the area where it hurts. Our physical body constantly signals us about some problems and malfunctions, but in everyday life, we are simply blind and deaf to this. There is also the aspect of habit, where you get used to something, and it seems to you that it should be that way. During practical energy work, consciousness accelerates, receptivity increases, the volume of consciousness grows, and these impulses become visible again. They are perceived once more, and this is identified as pain. Therefore, it is necessary to check the physical condition, to look at the area that hurts. It may potentially be damaged. You have become accustomed to this damage in your physical, mental, and energetic states, and therefore you filter it out. You shouldn't do that. You should love your body, take care of it, and respond in a timely manner to the impulses it sends. Yes, there is a special practice that incorporates human whim into the vibrations of intention, and this is done through will, because we can manage our will. I will show this in detail in The Power of Consciousness 2, but I have also demonstrated this practice several times somewhere on the internet. The essence is that a person charges their will energy with their desire, waits for a specific reaction of will energy, then draws it into the abdomen, raising it through the flow of intention, connecting with the flow of intention, then will and intention connect with the energies of the heart. As a result, will, intention, and love move upward, connecting with the energies of sincerity. Will, intention, love, and sincerity rise even higher, connecting with the energies of conscience, and this fist, meaning the five energies gathered together like a fist, bursts into the space of the seventh gates and then moves towards the point of desire realization. Except for the point of desire realization, this fist cannot move anywhere because will holds this direction vector. And through such a practice, a person can indicate to the universe what they want from it. In other words, this way they can make a request. And then, when the universe hears a person, when the universe begins to react, just act and agree. Everything will happen on its own. The soul is a state of wholeness and indivisibility. And you can enter this state. When you perceive the soul, such reflections can even cause you to lose the ability to perceive similar thoughts. That is, what? Let them do what they want. Something like that. I mean, why should I try to lower my level of thinking to understand the level of thinking of other schools? Why do I need that? I would rather spend this time on the perception of my soul, on the fire of love, on wholeness, on unity, and on the state of Archangel Svara. And I will continue to achieve my set goal, my intention, which is mine and mine alone, and which I in no way impose on anyone or call anyone to follow me. I only show practices, techniques, and ways to achieve your intentions. And my intention remains mine. It is not subject to filtering by any other schools. It is absolutely not subject to any external approval, because if you are seeking an approved intention, you are probably engaging in something that is not right for you. Intention is always only what is yours. And the soul is a state of wholeness and unity, a divinity in the heart, fully manifested as it can be lost. The truth lies in your extrasensory skill. If you take all the time you spend on studying, endless studying, and instead invest it in developing yourself and your abilities, that will be the truth. For now, this is wandering in the dark in such a form. Is it possible to understand this through one's own feeling? The only way to understand this is solely through one's own vision and extrasensory perception. This is the only possibility. During my training, Ashan personally told me dozens of times. I have said it dozens of times, hundreds of times. I have said it to other practitioners dozens, hundreds of times. And still, you are imagining something of your own. Well, seeing this process just once is enough, and there's no need to talk about it anymore. Well, except for those cases when people come to you, ask questions, and you try to juggle words to somehow help the person get closer to the correct vector of movement, not to the soul, but to the correct vector of movement. Seeking schools is the wrong vector of movement. Focusing attention on your bind in the heart is the correct vector. Well, and words are lies. This is an inherent truth in our lives. Why does this happen? Because of the era of potassium. Because it is meant to happen this way. This is how this era is designed. Well, this is a classic of the genre. This means that you do not know how to live with a more powerful energy than you are used to. I constantly encountered these processes both in my practice and by observing others. That is, why does a person not have a huge amount of energy? Why? Because they do not know how to manage it. Because they cannot maintain composure. They cannot keep their focus when there is a lot of energy. They start to fidget. They begin to move in a sloppy manner, twitching. His attention jumps from thought to some object, from the object to thought. There is a constant hustle, as if you have ended up in a market because of your own energy. And this state, what does practice actually provide? Practice gives the opportunity to enter a more powerful state of energy that is not natural for a person. And when you enter these more powerful states of energy, you must train yourself to be in these states harmoniously, calmly, and balanced. And so, while you teach yourself to be in more powerful states harmoniously, calmly, and balanced, yes, you can bump your pinky against the table and everything can slip from your hands. And you hit your head on some crossbar. Well, with my height, I was constantly hitting my head on something. You just start to rush, and your attention gets distracted. It's not possible to maintain this intensity. Then gradually, over time, you become more harmonious. These states become more natural for you, and you behave calmly. That's all. Well, this is not even a discussion. Essentially, it is described in the Vedic texts. We live in the dream of Brahma. Brahmins dream of our world and its various variations. There are many like Brahma, and all of them dream of Vishnu. What did Vishnu turn Shiva into when he separated and united with his mind? Accordingly, one can say that Vishnu dreams of Ardhanarishvara. Ardhanarishvara, he is simultaneously divided and whole. If we are to speak of what truth is, how do we interpret the word truth? So, what meaning do we put into the word truth? Whoever has the stronger intention is right. Why? Because intention is stronger. Why is it right? Because intention is nothing other than the manifestation of the primordial Shiva, and the primordial is always right. Why? Because no one else defines the order but him. Once he defines the order, then it is correct. Whoever approaches his state and begins to determine order is correct. The intention of Brahma and the Brahmin is stronger, let's say, than mine. Therefore, for me, Brahman defines the rules, and this is how it goes, along this hierarchical chain. But what is in Brahman, what is in me, and what is in Vishnu, in Shiva, is absolutely the same, meaning that the energies and intentions are absolutely identical. Shiva is in everything. His manifestation is in everything. And so, in all of this, what is truth? Tomorrow we will wake up and Shiva will come up with yet another scenario, and that will be the truth. And then he will come up with another 50 of these scenarios and another 1,000 of these scenarios, and then he will take all of this and destroy it during Mahpral. And how will we determine truth in all of this? What is the defining aspect of the word truth? Therefore, practitioners who have more or less figured out what is happening here create their own goals, they create their own intentions, and they manifest and move towards these intentions through the energies that Shiva has split into. It is will, intention, love, sincerity, conscience, 5 fathers through which movement occurs in the worlds of dreams. If you set the goal to completely emerge from dreams, you will simply wake up alive, and that's all. But not because you have become alive. And because you have always been that way, nothing has changed. It's just that now it is obvious to you. Just yesterday, it was not obvious to you. So these reflections are just a play with the illusions of a particle of consciousness that is not yet ready to realize the fact that it was Shiva, is Shiva, and will be Shiva until the moment of Mahapralaya, when everything returns to the original ages.